And once I'm in jail, and once my arresting officer is gone, my presumption of innocence just disappears. I am a criminal. And as far as anybody looking at me is concerned, I did something wrong to deserve to be here. Grace and peace, and spoiler alert. My name's Ryan, and I am the Moviepastor. I'm telling this story today because I just watched the movie Just Mercy. Just Mercy is a story about a man who was wrongly accused and convicted of a crime he didn't commit, and how difficult it was for him to see justice, how much work it took to overturn the presumption of guilt that was on his life. And I don't tell this to compare my sufferings to anyone else's, to say that I, as a straight white man, have difficulties that compare to a black man in the Deep South on death row in the 60s or any such thing. But I think there are some people that will hear my story that won't be able to hear the story of Just Mercy. And I think that whenever we read texts, we apply them to ourselves. Whenever we watch movies, we relate to the stories in terms of our own stories. And this is the way, the smaller, reduced way in which I relate to that story. What happened was I was driving home one evening through the bright city lights of Austin, and I'd forgotten to turn on my headlights. So I was pulled over. The cop wasn't planning on giving me a ticket. He just wanted to tell me, hey, turn your headlights on. But after he got my license and registration, went back to the squad car to run it, found out there was a warrant out for my arrest. Now, that was a surprise to him. It was certainly a surprise to me. So we need to rewind to my junior year of seminary, 3 years earlier. When I first started in Texas, I had a California driver's license, and I got a ticket for rear-ending somebody. We were in traffic. I bumped the bumper in front of me. There was no damage, but the person I bumped wanted to file a police report anyway. Well, I got a ticket in addition to, the insurance trading and dealing with the accident stuff. I got a ticket for failure to maintain a safe following distance. And when I went to pay it, that ticket disappeared. It was gone. I went to the website. I searched for all tickets in the state of Texas under my name. I went to the county courthouse. There was no ticket to be found. It had never been filed. So I figured, man, the highway patrol officer, or in Texas, it was a Texas Ranger, he must have had mercy on me. He must have decided, not to file the ticket, decided it was frivolous. Well, no, that wasn't what happened. He misread my California driver's license. The names were printed in a different order with a comma than they are in Texas. And he filed the ticket for James Ryan Gaffney. My name is Ryan James. So I'm looking for Ryan Gaffney. It's under James Gaffney. That's my dad's name, as it turns out. Anyway, I fail to appear in court because of course I do, because I don't know I've got a ticket. And then I fail to follow up at the subsequent appearances, and before I know it, there's a warrant out for my arrest. And once there's a warrant out for my arrest, they do a much better job of tracking me down. And they figure out that James Ryan is Ryan James. No problem. Flag that on my new Texas license, and once I get ticketed for not having my headlights on, I am under arrest. They put me in the back of the squad car, they handcuff me, but the officer, he's pretty nice about it. He understands, he's seen me. I don't look like the sort of dangerous criminal who normally has a warrant out for immediate arrest, and he has a level of understanding that this is some kind of a misunderstanding. Even as we're driving to the jail, he's almost apologetic. He won't use the word "I'm sorry" because, of course, the word "I'm sorry" has some legal ramifications, and officers know not to say those words. But he acts contrite, and he lets me use my cell phone to call a friend from seminary to pick up my car so it doesn't have to be towed, as I am carted off to jail, and it's nighttime. Remember, I needed the headlights on, so everything's closed. Nobody's available, and I stew in jail for several hours until there's a judge available to meet at midnight. I'm booked, I'm examined, all my property is seized, and once I'm in jail, and once my arresting officer is gone, my presumption of innocence just disappears. I am a criminal, and as far as anybody looking at me is concerned, I did something wrong to deserve to be here. Whether I'm able to pay my debt to society or get a good lawyer who can get me off, or the judge can release me because he doesn't want to deal with me and I get away with it. As far as the officers are concerned in the bullpen, I'm trash. There comes to be this really clear divide because we can see each other. All of the people that are in the holding area versus all of the people that are in the police headquarters. And there's just this clear divide between the us and the them. And I'm one of us. I'm one of the people who've been arrested, and we're talking to each other and sharing our stories and relating with each other, and so are the officers as they look down on us. About midnight comes, and we're chained together and carted in to see the judge. I tell my story. The judge immediately decides that this is something that could happen to anyone and I should be released immediately. And then I'm taken back to the holding area for release as soon as my paperwork is filed. And that takes 7 more hours. That's intentional. Other people were booked, entered the jail, and released while I was waiting for my paperwork to be filed. But someone in the police office decided that I needed to be in there longer, wasn't happy with the judge's decision, and left me there until in the morning crew came over at about 8 a.m., and the morning crew didn't see me as, they didn't have any feelings about me, positive or negative. They just saw, oh, paperwork, let's get this off of the to-do list. And I was immediately released as soon as the new crew came in. And then I called somebody from seminary to come pick me up at jail. Again, I was a minister in training. And found out my friends had been following the adventures all that night. About a month later, I got a bill for $500 for court fees and further charges on my record. I talked to a friend who was also going to seminary with me, who was a lawyer, and we looked into what it was going to take to appeal my court date because it was taking place during one of my final exams, and then finally attend my court date, pay the additional $500 on top of all of the tickets that I'd already paid, back payment for, the headlight and the failure to follow a lane change, or the failure to maintain a safe following distance, and then finally got my little letter that said I wasn't wanted for anything else. If I'd been poor, if I hadn't had $1,000 of extra money to be able to throw at this problem, if I didn't have a friend who was a lawyer who was willing to help me out at no charge, and indeed if I had been any other color, if I'd been black or Hispanic, there would have been a lot more opportunities for this really big problem to get a lot worse. There are so many judgment calls that have to take place in our justice system, so many opportunities for people to be proven right, that you're trouble, that problems pile on top of each other. One problem creates more problems. One unpaid ticket leads to a failure to appear. After the failure to appear, you end up with court fees. Some paperwork gets misfiled or sent to the wrong address. Your address changes. You don't have a stable address. And all of a sudden you're in jail and you can't afford your own defense, or your counsel makes a mistake. These things happen all the time, and they happen disproportionately to our most vulnerable populations, to the poor and to minorities. And so if it can happen to me, I mean, the big thing that I learned from that experience that applies when I see stories like the story in Just Mercy is that it doesn't take a lot of racism. You know, I'm racist enough to look at somebody who doesn't look like me and choose not to help them in a situation where they might desperately need someone's help. The difference between someone just seeming trustworthy and not seeming trustworthy could be the difference between just $800 to end up being not guilty and me losing my car. I mean, if my car was impounded by police and then I had to go file the next day, if I had a job that missing a day of the job would have gotten me fired, any of these things, it just comes down to, do I look like trouble? Are they ready to be a little nicer or a little meaner? And so I hope that when you engage with stories like this, I hope you watch the movie Just Mercy and you think about the ways in which our justice system needs to be improved. And I hope you think about them from a theological perspective. You know, the last lines of the film Just Mercy say, we all need justice, we all need mercy, and perhaps we all need some measure of unmerited grace. Isn't that true? We call on God to bring us justice against our enemies. We call on God to give us mercy for the ways in which we've been enemies to other people, that we don't get the punishment that we deserve. And God gives us grace we don't deserve, gives us unmerited favor. For many ways, our justice system is too Old Testament. And I'm glad that there are people working to bring that back in line.
And when in scenes of glory I sing